All right, welcome everyone. My name is Dinah Kinard. I'm in the admission office at St. Edward's University here in beautiful Austin, Texas. It's wonderful to have you with us today online. I know we have students joining us from the local area as well as places around the country and around the globe today. So thank you so much for joining us. You have arrived to the webinar on the psychology program at St. Edward's, which is actually one of our most popular majors at the university. And so we're really excited to have one of our faculty members from the program here to present to you today and tell you all about the program and answer the questions that you may have. So thank you so much for joining us today. I know we're all spending a lot of our days these days online, a lot of our time. And so I appreciate you being willing to connect with us via Zoom and spend the next 30 to 45 minutes with us online to learn about the program. I know this is probably not the way that some of you envisioned you're doing your college search or visiting campus. Since March 13th, St. Edward's University has been in remote operation. We are still fully open and working with our current students and prospective students and families, but we have been in remote operation. So I'm coming to you live from my house here in Austin. We do hope to get back on campus at the Hilltop very soon, hopefully in a few months. And we'll look forward to hosting you and welcoming you to campus once it's safe and possible for us all to be together again on the Hilltop. So thank you for joining us in this virtual space in the meantime, and I hope you find this informative. Just a few housekeeping things. We are going to basically Dr. Rackley, Dr. Kadie Rackley is presenting today. She's assistant professor of psychology. She's prepared a presentation for you that'll be about 20 to 30 minutes in length to give you a comprehensive overview of the program. And once she has concluded the formal part of the program, she's happy to take any questions that you may have. So you're welcome to use the Q&A feature throughout the presentation. So if Dr. Rackley is speaking about something and it sparks a question, feel free to just drop it in the Q&A. She will get to it at the end of the presentation. We are not using the chat feature today. So if you need to communicate with us here at the webinar or ask a question, please do use the Q&A tool. You can also ask your questions anonymously if you feel more comfortable doing that. So that's our format today. I am once again very proud to introduce Dr. Kadie Rackley, Assistant Professor of Psychology, and I'll go ahead and turn it over to her for the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome, everyone. I'm so excited to be able to talk with you today about the psychology major here at St. Ed's. And I know this is a different time that we're in and different than I'm sure you imagine your college search going, but I'm happy to answer any questions. And my office door is always open, so I feel like this is a similar format to if you happen to run into me on campus and we're curious about psychology. And so with that, I wanted to tell you a little bit about myself before we get into the psychology major. So my name is Dr. Rackley, and I'm an assistant professor of psychology. This is my second year teaching at St. Edward's. I have taught a few classes at St. Ed's before and at UT, but this is my second year full time. I am a native Texan, so if you have any questions about living in Texas, I've lived in Austin for about 15 years or so too, so I've been around for a while. And I'm also a first generation college student, and I always like to share that with my students. I know some of you may be the first in your immediate family to be going to a four-year university. That was the case for me, and I know that the experience was a little different. Like there was a steeper learning curve for me, and so I'm always happy to be a resource for other students who are in that situation. If you ever have a question that you feel is really silly, you know, or that you think everybody else knows and you don't, like I'm happy to answer those questions for you because I remember what that was like. And one of the most important things is I'm actually an alum of the psychology department at St. Ed's. So about 10 to 12 years ago, I was on the Hilltop as an undergraduate student, just like we're hoping all of you will be in the fall. And I graduated with a degree in psychology. And I loved my time at St. Ed's so much, and I love psychology so much that I wanted to come back and teach. And now I'm getting to be able to do that, getting to live my dream. And so after I graduated at St. Ed's, I went to UT Austin for my graduate school, and I got my master's and PhD there, and then I came back to teach. And my research areas of interest are like prejudice and stereotyping. I do a lot of research with imposterism and topics related to gender and culture related to race and ethnicity, and especially social influences on achievement and career selection. But so that's just a little bit about me. And in our department, we have a lot of cool research that's going on, which is why I highlighted my research interest in particular. But some of you might be curious about what psychology even is. And if we look at the American Psychological Association, this is the national, probably even global professional organization for psychologists. So those who see clients like as therapists or clinical psychologists, those who teach about psychology, and those who do research in psychology. And their definition is that this is the scientific study of the human mind and of behavior, which covers a lot of different areas. And you can see here, I just came up with a list off the top of my head of different kind of areas of specialization in psychology. So we can see there's developmental psychology, looking at cognition, looking at how the brain works, looking at sexuality and gender, focus on stats and research, actual like clinical practice, like seeing clients, sports psychology, advocacy and policy, mental disorders, health and well-being. There's a lot of different areas where we can really focus in on what we want to learn about human behavior and how the mind works. So that's what makes psychology really cool, is that it covers so many different topics. And that's why I think it appeals to a lot of people, because we can all find certain aspects of it that we really resonate with. And so you might be curious, what do our psychology students learn? Like, what will you learn pursuing a psychology degree at St. Ed's, should you choose to do so? And as a department, we've outlined these 6 overall learning objectives that we have, that we cover with all of our courses. And so the first is common for most classes. It's discipline competency, just learning about these areas in psychology, the content and knowledge and how to apply that knowledge in the areas you're studying. We also really emphasize both oral and written communication. Those are both important working in the field of psychology. And so we have multiple opportunities for students to practice those skills. We also incorporate problem solving. A lot of assignments are applied assignments where we use the material that's being covered in class and apply it to real world scenarios, hypothetical scenarios, and even for research methods, many students get the chance to design a study from scratch and get to conduct that study over the course of the semester. And we also include moral reasoning and social justice. There are a lot of ethical and social justice concerns in the field of psychology that we try to address throughout our coursework. But so these are kind of our 6 broad learning objectives. And you might want to know about like the specific skills and knowledge that students gain in our program. So in addition to those kind of broad learning objectives, we have these specific skills that our students learn while completing our coursework. Of course, it's the content covered in the courses, and we try to touch on a lot of those different areas that I talked about a few slides ago. We try to really introduce students to a breadth of topics in psychology, and hoping that you can find something that's really of interest to you and get an understanding of such a vast field. We also really focus on the application of this knowledge, whether it's in projects where you're thinking about real world scenarios, or you're actually conducting research or doing lab projects in order to apply what you've been learning. We also focus on how to hand calculate statistical analyses. So we do have our students take a statistics class, and there you learn the differences between the different types of statistical tests we use. You won't have to do that throughout the program. It's just in that one class to really understand like when we need to use different types of statistical tests. And then after that point, you also get experience in using software that conducts that analysis for you. So we really like this approach because you get that conceptual understanding and then also learn how to use different software and application tools that will be helpful when you hit the job market. And we also include different skills that you'll learn is how to design, conduct, analyze, and write up a scientific study in APA style. So APA is the writing style specific to our field. And we have opportunities for students to really think like a researcher and create studies and get practice in writing up scientific knowledge in APA format. We also have multiple opportunities for oral and written communication, also critical thinking. That's important for us to include in all of our classes, problem solving and critical thinking about research and about practices in the field of psychology. And I want to highlight that at the culminating experience for the psychology degree involves an internship. And this is a great way for students to really figure out what it is they want to do with their psychology degree, because we've seen that there's so many different areas that you can specialize in for psychology, and often some students feel overwhelmed and don't really know where to go. And so with these classes in these different areas and with the internship opportunities, that's a way for us to help guide you and figure out what you like, what you don't like, and where you would be a good fit in the field of psychology. And so these are the requirements for the psychology major. So these are specific. Each major has what we call general education requirements, and those are classes that are common across all majors. So things like ethics, presentational speaking, different, I think artistic expression classes, those are common for all majors. This is focused on the classes that we require for our psychology students, and this is for the psychology major. And you can see here that this is where we touch on all of those, not all of the specializations, but a lot of those subtopics that we talked about at the beginning of this presentation. We have general psychology, which is like intro psychology, where we really touch on a lot of those topics. We cover developmental psychology, personality, biopsychology, where you get to learn about like neurology and how the brain works. Social psychology, abnormal psych, which includes mental disorders, and that's often a favorite of a lot of our students and part of why they may have gone into the psychology major. And then we also have statistics and research methods, and that's where you really get that hands-on practical like calculation and scientific skills that I mentioned on the previous slide. And then that class that's called research and field experience in psychology, it's towards the bottom. That's where our students do their internship, where they complete an internship for a class credit that's part of what we call a culminating experience. And that's what we have our students sort of culminate their degree in, an internship in their area of interest that really helps to see, like, is this what I want to go into? What is it like to work in a clinical practice? What is it like to teach psychology? What is it like to work in the Austin State Hospital? Wherever that might be. So this can give you a preview as to the classes that we require for psychology majors. And you can see at the bottom, it says to choose 9 hours of psychology electives. So that means that you have the freedom to take 3 extra psychology classes in whatever kind of area of interest that you have. And in a couple slides, I'll show you some of the electives that we have currently offered. And it might be that maybe you're not sure if you want to major in psychology, but maybe you'd like to minor in psychology. We do have a minor in psych as well. It's not as many hours as the major is. And here are the requirements for the minor. So this is if you decided to really concentrate and focus on a different area of study, but you still really like psychology, you can always minor in it. And so that will show up on your transcript and show that you have taken some psychology classes. And here for the minor, we just require that intro psych, a development class, and social psychology. And then half of the minor is those electives. So again, we understand that psychology is such a broad field that we want you to have the flexibility to choose the areas that you're interested in. And speaking of the areas that you're interested in, here are the different electives that count for either the psychology major or the psychology minor, or anytime you're interested in any psychology classes. So you can see that we have human sexuality, we have different developmental classes. So especially if you're interested in like adolescent psychology or child development, we have chemical dependency issues, and that's related to like substance use and abuse and dependency. We also have health psychology, which is really a focus on promoting like positive well-being and taking care of our physical health and mental health. We also have psychology and cinema, and that's really looking at different media portrayals and analyzing them through different psychological perspectives. We also have industrial and organizational psychology, and that's looking at psychology like within a business setting, within a business or corporate or office setting, and what those dynamics look like. We also have families and intimate relationships, and this is a popular class, especially for students who are considering going into counseling or doing some sort of work like with families and with clients in particular. And then we have some neuropsychology classes in case that's something that you're interested in. Child abuse and neglect, that's often a class that many of our students who kind of want to go in a realm of like social work or advocacy will often take those classes. We have serial killers and violent sex offender. These are not how-tos, not how-to classes. They're classes more so to look at kind of the psychology behind serial killers and violent sex offenders. And if you watch shows like Criminal Minds, like where they're the behavioral analysis unit, they're looking at the MO of their suspects. That's really what these classes focus on. And we also have sensation and perception, and then we have advanced research as well. So really there's a good range of specializations that you can kind of cater your psychology degree to focus in. So getting that establishment in the basics and some of like general psychology and social and personality, but then you also have the opportunity to really tailor it to your topics of interest through these electives. And so that's one of the extra benefits of being a psych major. So in addition to learning useful skills and awesome classes, I may be a little biased, but I think that our classes are a lot of fun, and a lot of students even outside of our majors will enroll in these classes. So they're really popular with the student body. But additional benefits include part of the gen ed requirements that I mentioned earlier, those ones that are common across majors, is that part of those include mission markers. And so all of the mission markers and some of the gen ed requirements are actually fulfilled by taking classes in the psychology degree. So it's like you're getting two birds with one stone, where you fulfill your degree requirements for psychology, but you're also fulfilling some of those general requirements in your degree plan. And that's what leaves a lot of room for the psychology electives and additional room for electives beyond that that can be in any area that you're interested in. So because of that sort of double dipping, we have the flexibility for students to take about 26 credit hours in whatever classes they're interested in. That can be more psychology classes. That could be maybe classes in like social work or sociology. It can be classes in like business, or even just in areas of interest like English or art or any of those. And so it's really neat to be able to have that room and have that freedom in your schedule to take classes that you're interested in and not have to be beholden to whatever your schedule or your degree plan is. So I think that's one of the strengths of our major in particular. It's also one of the largest majors on campus, so that means it's also one of the coolest majors. No, I'm just kidding. I mean, I think most students think that we're a really interesting and useful major, and there's a reason why we're always have been, since I've been at St. Ed's, one of the largest majors on campus. And faculty also have a lot of cool research projects that are going on. And so I'll talk about that in a little bit and how students can get involved. But it's nice to be able to see different faculty and the research areas that they're working in, because we all have different areas of specialization and that we're investigating with research. And it's also an opportunity for students to gain research experience if that's something you're interested in. And so that brings me to different student activities that are related to our psychology major. So we've got two different student groups that are on campus. One of them is called Psych Society, and this is a student interest group. It's mostly made of psychology major and minors, but really it's anyone who's interested in psychology. And it's a group that really encourages students to get to know each other, to socialize with each other. Like I said, it's one of the largest majors, so there's often a lot of people in the major you don't know. And so that's a great way to meet people who have similar interests as you do. And it's also a student group that hosts different programs and different events on campus. So here I got some of these photos from the Facebook page for the SEU Psych Society group. So you can check that out if you're interested in it. But one of these is like a yoga instruction. I think that was happening like during finals week, like during kind of a stressful time in the semester, to really promote and encourage taking care of our mental health. There's also lots of other different student activities. Sometimes they'll invite guest speakers, they'll have panels about certain topics, One that's really common is about like human sexuality and love and relationships. We typically see an event like that at least like once a year or so. But they also create, and these events are open to the entire campus, but it's a great way for students of similar interests to get to meet each other and get to learn more about that topic. We also have a student group that's called the PSYCH, and that is the Honor Society for psychology majors. And so that's something that I think students are invited to in their junior year, and it's something you can put on your resume and say that you are a psychology student that has made like notable academic achievements by being part of the PSYCH, the Honor Society. There's also something that we call the Brown Bag Series, and this is a series of panels and presentations that are organized by faculty, and it's specifically Dr. Janetta Williams and Dr. Delia Pascos-Kothman, and they organize different events each semester with, again, the goal of having topics and bringing students together who have similar interests or similar questions or similar goals. And so it's a mix of different presentation types. So sometimes different faculty, we've talked about our research to students and really had presentations where students who are interested in a certain research topic can learn more about it. We've also had panels that are focused on different careers in psychology and where we can go with a degree in psychology after graduating from St. Ed's. We've also had a panel specifically focused on graduate school, and a lot of our psych majors are interested in grad school, and it was sort of an informational session about what's the kind of experience I need to get in grad school in order to go to grad school. How do I know what kind of degree or if I should go at all? And then we've also had alumni panels as well, where we've had alumni of the St. Ed psychology program come back and talk about what their experience was like and what they're doing now. And then another, and this is the research or the student activity that I've been alluding to earlier in this presentation, but there is also opportunity for students to be part of research projects with our faculty. So many of our faculty are actively conducting research, and because we're in the field of psychology, we need human participants for our research, right? We're studying human behavior, so we need humans to be in our research to learn more about that behavior and thought process. And so many of us are conducting that research now and are actively like collecting data from participants over the semesters, and will be like when you are at St. Ed's. So if you are interested in research at all, or if you're considering graduate school, this is a great department to be in, because with so many faculty conducting research, we often take on student assistants to help us to conduct that research. And student assistants can do anything from helping to collect data, to actually creating surveys, to helping run analyses. Pretty much any sort of experience that you want to gain, there's some sort of project that's at that stage where you could be able to help. And that's something that it's just important to get to know different faculty and see what their research interests are, and see if you'd be interested in any of those projects. And students can also potentially present those findings at different conferences. So again, if research is something you're interested in, if you'd like to gain that experience, that's something that many of our faculty are committed to doing, is to make sure that our students get research experience if that's something they want, and have the opportunity to try to present that research if they're wanting to do that as well. And so there are two common conferences that we go to. One is called SOURCE, and that one is actually at St. Ed's. It's a St. Ed's only conference, so only for St. Ed students. And these are where the pictures are from that you can see here. These are actually two of my students who presented their projects at SOURCE, and they really enjoyed that opportunity. We also will sometimes take students to what we call SWAPA, and it's the Southwestern Psychological Association. So that one is beyond St. Ed's. It's a larger conference. It involves, I think, Texas and Oklahoma and New Mexico, but many of us will take students there to present research as well. And so that's something to consider if you're interested in research or graduate school. These are great opportunities to actually get that experience while you're in undergrad. And you might be curious and thinking about taking on a psychology major. Many of our students ask, well, what can I do with this? What can I do with a psychology degree after I leave St. Ed's? And it's important to remember that psychology students are trained to work with people, right? To understand people and to be able to work with them, to problem solve, to communicate clearly, right? Both written and oral communication, and to even navigate new software programs. So I mentioned like we use SPSS and other software programs. That's a great skill to be able to put on your resume and say, I can quickly learn different analysis or computer programs because I've had to do that in my major. And all of these skills prepare students for graduate programs. A lot of our students go on to graduate school either to focus on like clinical practice, to go into research or teaching. Some even go into law and policy and other areas. Some of our students are really interested in like social work. And so they go into fields where they work as like a social worker or an advocate or a case worker. And many of those students will often take some like social work classes while they're here as well. A lot of our majors also go into higher education. Some go into the admission office, some into career counseling or even academic counseling. And higher education means like at the university or college level. This also prepares our students to work in research. So some of our students go on to work as research assistants or lab managers under large like grant funded projects. Also, our students are trained to work in human resources, in marketing and advertising, and even forensic psychology. And so really it depends on what you're interested in, and you have the flexibility in your degree plan to kind of add some classes to really gain that experience in these specific areas. But our students are trained well and can succeed in a lot of different careers. And so these are some careers that we have, specific ones from our alumni. We have postdoctoral fellows, and that involves like doing research and teaching. This is at the Center of Educational Excellence. We have licensed therapists, licensed marriage and family therapists, particularly working in Austin. Also, one of my friends is working as a foster youth specialist paralegal. She kind of went that advocate route after graduation and works at Texas Rio Grande Legal Aid. And you can see here, there's a lot of different career paths that our psychology alum have taken, including assistant professors. I'm an alum of psychology, and Dr. Emily Barton, who's in our neuroscience program, she's also an alum of SANEDS as well. And so here, this really shows that with psychology, it's such a broad field that our majors are very well-rounded in their preparation and are prepared to go into a lot of different areas after graduating from SANEDS. And with that, that's all that I have for this presentation. And I've been seeing the Q&A bubble pop up, so I think some folks have some questions, but I'd love to hear from you, any questions you have about the psych department. And I thank you for being here with us today. I really appreciate you taking time out of your schedule to be here to talk about the psychology major. And I will pull up, here we go, pull up the Q&A. Oh, so this is a good question. So someone asked, how many math classes do we have to take? And so I'll answer that right now. For the psychology major, the only like really math heavy class is statistics. And I know it may sound a little intimidating because I said that it involves hand calculations. I teach stats, and I know math can be intimidating for a lot of students, so I really try to like break it down and make it really accessible. But that is the only really math heavy class that we have in the psych major. And what's nice, so I mentioned earlier that psych classes can count for some of those like gen ed requirements, the ones that are common for all students at SANEDS. One of those gen ed requirements is a math class, but our stats class counts for that. So if you take a psychology major, you only have to take stats. You don't have to take that other quantitative reasoning class. It counts for both. So stats is really the only, and it's just one class, 3 credit hours. That's our only true math class. When you get to research methods, it doesn't involve hand calculations anymore. At that point, that's where we introduce that analysis software. So it still involves numbers, but it's not really conducting math. It's more of just interpreting the numbers. Like, I got these numbers on this output sheet. Now, what is that telling me? So I wouldn't say that that one is really a math class. It just does involve some numbers, but that's where that conceptual understanding of stats really comes in handy. So really just one like math class, and that would be statistics. And it's really framed in the scientific method, like hypothesis testing. So I hope that makes you feel better about the amount of math classes that you need to take if you decided to be a psych major. And let's see, here is another question. Psychology. Oh, so this is one where someone asked if a psych major would need a specific calculator. So no, you do not need any specific calculator for taking stats. The most complicated calculation that you would need to make would just be taking the square root of something. So just a plain calculator, one that I'm trying to even remember. I feel like they're like $10 that you can find them for pretty inexpensively, but that's the most complicated like function that we need from a calculator. It's just taking the square root or squaring a number. So that's it. You don't need any kind of TI calculator, just a plain Jane calculator will do. And so that's what, hopefully that also makes you feel better about that one math class, that stats class. It doesn't get, the formulas have multiple steps to them, but the actual like math or calculations that you're using doesn't go any more complicated than the square root. And then we have another question here. Are there a lot of students at St. Ed's that pursue a psych major with a pre-med track? That is a great question. I think that we do. I know I just started advising students this year. So this is something that you may not be aware of at college, but for like St. Ed's, and I think a lot of other universities do this too, when freshmen come in, they have like a general academic academic advisor who kind of will guide you into what classes to take in that first year. And then after your freshman year, you switch to be assigned to a faculty person who is in your degree plan, and that person becomes your advisor for the rest of your time at St. Ed's. And the goal there is that we can give specific advising and guidance with classes, especially if we know like what you want to do with your psychology degree or what you're interested in. Like we can help make those suggestions about, oh, you want to go into social work? Well, Dr. McCormick is teaching the child abuse and neglect class this semester. That would go really well with the type of work that you're interested in. So that's what I mean when I say that I have advisees. I have current psychology majors that I am advising as far as like the classes they need to take. And I do know that some of them are pre-med track. I don't know what the like proportion or percentage is of those students, but I do think that that is a fairly common thing that we see in psychology. I think it may also be in our behavioral neuroscience degree too, except that one has more required classes. And so that one doesn't have as much flexibility for classes outside of the major. And so that's why I mentioned like psych is really cool because you have a lot of freedom to take classes that you're interested in outside of those psychology classes. Behavioral neuro doesn't have that freedom. I know some of the students there are also pre-med, but I think that we do see a good number of pre-med students in both psychology and in neuroscience. Let's see, there's another question is, what are common minors that our psychology students declare? And so since there's a lot of flexibility in the psychology major, a lot of our students will declare minors in other areas. And so that's also something that we do see pre-med, like a pre-med and health focus for a lot of our students. We also, I think some common minors that I've seen are like criminal justice, and yeah, it's criminal justice. And those are often students who are interested in like forensic psychology or going into like policy sort of, or research areas of psychology. We also see a lot of like social work and sociology minors. And those are often students who are really interested in working one-on-one with clients, wanting to be like in an advocate or caseworker role in some way, and really interested in those systems. We do have a good number of students who also get minors in business, because some of our students are really interested in going into clinical practice or like therapeutic practice and actually opening up their own practice. So like opening up their own business and partnering with someone else to actually see clients. And so I've had, in fact, some of my advisees are doing that route. So that way you kind of get the psychology to be a clinician, as well as the business information to be able to open a business. So those are the most common minors that we see.
And Kadie, I'll just chime in. Thanks for that. That was some fantastic information and a really thorough, comprehensive picture of the psychology program and what we have to offer and what our students can expect to find at St. Ed's. So students, please feel free to drop in questions and use this as an opportunity to let us know exactly what you want to know about psychology at St. Edward's. So please do add more questions to the Q&A as you have them.
Another question is like, where our students get internships for that class. For our psychology majors, there's opportunity throughout your time at St. Ed's in your college career to do internships like over the summer or in your spare time that you can do on your own. We do make sure that all of our students complete one internship towards the end of their degree. And we see them placed all over. Some work as teaching assistants, some work in different like clinical offices, some work with like advocacy organizations, and some, I think I've even heard of some working like in a psychiatric hospital before. Let's see. This question, would a person wanting to be a child psychiatrist focus on sociology, pre-med, or both? I would say that a person who wants to go into child psychiatry, that psychology is a really good major for that, because you need that grounding in psychology. And for psychiatry specifically, that person you would need to go to medical school, I think, for psychiatry. There also are like child psychologists and child therapists. So those like, and the main distinction between a psychiatrist and psychologist is psychiatrists actually prescribe medications, whereas psychologists and therapists are ones who work with clients one-on-one in a therapy setting. And so you can also be like a child psychologist or a child therapist if you didn't want to do the med school route specifically for psychiatry. But if you want psychiatry, then yes, I would say pre-med, because I think you would have to go to med school to be a psychiatrist. But for the child focus, I would say the psychology major and really focusing on those development classes is the best approach to get the psychology grounding, the developmental focus for working with children or adolescent populations. And then for psychiatry, all of our students take abnormal psychology, which is about mental disorders. Sometimes we've had a counseling and guidance class, and so that would be a good one to take. I think we just haven't been able to offer it in the last like year or two, but that would be my recommendation, is a psych major, really taking a lot of those development classes, and then being pre-med if you know you want to go into psychiatry, or if not, it may be better to pair with like social work. I would say social work over sociology, because sociology is more like the study of human group behavior, where psychology is the study of individual human behavior. So I think hopefully that answers your question. If you have more follow-ups, feel free to add them to the Q&A. And one question is, are we graded heavier on tests or on project research and homework? So that's a great question, and it depends on the class. So some classes and some faculty prefer to do more exams. for those classes, like the ones that I've seen, and I know like my intro class kind of works that way because I have a lot of students who aren't psych majors. And so I don't really like doing papers in that class because it's a wide range of different backgrounds and goals. But that one, it's 4 different exams. And then there's also like opportunities for extra credit. Some classes, especially like the upper level classes, like the ones you would go into like as a sophomore or junior or senior, those tend to have more projects involved. Some of them are group projects where you might be, I think the chemical dependency class involves like a summit where each group takes on a specific disorder or chemical substance and talks about that and research methods. You're in groups to conduct an actual scientific study. Homeworks is really only I've seen in stats class. So the one class that's like a math class, that's the only one where I really see like kind of homework assignments. And really that one is just for each chapter, kind of making sure that students understand the math as we go on. And I know we don't assign a lot of problems. Like typically my stats homeworks have like 2 to 3 problems on them because it's really just like for students to gauge like, am I understanding how to do this math? So your question would depend on the class, but I think those first classes you'd be taking, there would be a mix of exams and maybe like a written paper or 2. As you get further into the degree, there are still exams for some classes, but that's where you might start seeing more projects and research papers. Although again, it depends on the class itself. But that's what's nice is that you get a variety of different skills from that, right? You hone your skills with like exam taking, with writing papers, with working on group projects, and with math calculations as well. And for this question, in accordance with a board certification in sex education, I was wondering the path, sexuality studies go hand in hand with this goal. So I think so. I think you're asking like if you wanted to go into like becoming board certified for sex education. I think psychology would be a good path towards this. We do offer human sexuality. We also offer like development. I know I'm teaching adolescent development this semester, and we talk about sexuality and the development of sexuality in adolescence, and we've been talking about such sex education. So I think that this would be a good major to consider for pursuing that career goal. Yeah, I think this would be a good path, and I think there are a lot of electives that could really help you to tailor that degree to map onto your goal. And I know one of my friends, speaking of and I didn't put her on the alumni list, I forgot, but for our internship class, some of my students have worked with a friend of mine who graduated from St. Ed. She is a licensed sex therapist and specifically working with those who are in like the LGBTQIA plus community. And so she is a really great resource. So if that's like, if you were kind of interested in that area, I know that's different from education, but she completed the psych degree as well. And so that's part of where those internships can really help you to get those connections to people working in those fields. So I think, yes, I'm not as familiar with sex education, but I know that some of our students go on to focus in like sexuality specifically. All right, I think that looks like these are all of the questions that we have in the Q&A. So thank you so much for being here. I think we're going to wrap up the webinar, but you can see the email addresses below. So mine is the Crackle one. I got a cool, I guess, username at St. Ed's. But so that's my email if you ever have questions and you want to follow up. There's also the email for the admissions office below mine. But great. So thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, everyone. Best of luck on your college search. Thank you for connecting with us on the Hilltop virtually today. We hope to see you in Austin on campus very soon. Take care and be well. Stay safe.